All right. Good evening, everyone. Looks like we hit about 250 attendees so far, and it's only going up, but I think it's time to get started. I want to welcome everybody tonight. I'm Jim Alexander. I'm the executive director and founder of IPHO, and I'm so excited about tonight. You're going to hear from some real-world industry pharmacists about how they started their career and where it's going and where it's gone. And I think it's just terrific that we're able to partner with a company like Lilly to bring you, this kind of content and this kind of N of one journeys about how you can get into industry and how you can have a very successful career in many different ways. We've got a record number of attendees tonight. I'm so excited about that. I remember when I was your age many years ago, I graduated in 1986, but Lilly was always known as a pharmacist-friendly company. All the schools used to go visit Lilly. All the sales reps, it seemed like, were at Lilly were pharmacists. And they've got a real grounding and a real heritage in that, which you're going to hear and see tonight. One of the things I want to make sure and call your attention to, students, is, fellowships are a great way to get into industry. And we certainly advocate for that. And if that's your path, we try to help you on that. But remember that those are very competitive, and only 1 in 5 applicants succeed. So there's a little 80-20 rule. But the other side of that is, which is the opportunity, 80% of all the pharmacists working in industry, never did a fellowship program, and they got there another way. And this is what you're going to hear tonight is one of those ways, and it's a great way. So, pay attention and learn, from our speakers tonight. I don't have my Lilly swag on. I don't have a red shirt tonight. I got a black one, some IPHO. I'm also wearing that because we've been making some great strides in our outreach and benefits and inclusion for minorities, and we did more of that today, which I'm really proud of, and you'll be hearing more about that very soon. So for me, it's a little bit of, I got a little bit of Lilly in me tonight, and a lot of IPHO, and a lot of love to get to everybody out there. And I think you're taking an important step tonight and just opening your mind to what the different opportunities are. And some of you tonight are going to follow this path. Many others might follow another journey, but I'm looking forward to being, inspired by our panelists tonight. And right now I'm going to turn it over to Santi Alexander, who's with Lilly, and she's going to kind of MC the rest of the way. I'll be back for the Q&A. So if you do have questions, not in the chat, please do the ask a question into the Q&A, and we're going to address those at the end. Santi, please take it away. And you're muted.
Sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. I'm Santi Alexander, Diversity Talent Scout at Lilly. And my colleagues and I are really excited to be here tonight. But first of all, we want to say thank you to IPHO, especially to Jim, Deb, and Melissa for making this happen for us tonight. Okay, on the agenda tonight will be introductions, talk about Lilly, and you'll hear from the pharmaceutical industry presenter, and they'll share their journey of how they got started in sales, which led them to their currently role right now, is such as HCP marketing, medical science liaison, and executive sales representative. And then we'll save the end for 30 minutes for Q&A. The first presenter you will hear from is Brittany Manning, PharmD, Associate Consultant, HCP Marketing. And then you will hear from Jay Amin, PharmD, Medical Science Liaison, and Doug Lee, Registered Pharmacist, Executive Sales Representative. Lilly is a global Fortune 500 pharmaceutical company operating in more than 100 countries. At Lilly, we're committed to bringing life-changing medicine to those who need them, in advancing the understanding and management of disease and supporting communities where we live and work. Since our founding in 1876, we have pioneered medical breakthroughs like human insulin, like polio vaccine, and many other important therapies. We are passionate about building on our legacy to make life better for individuals, communities, and the world around us. Lilly introduced the world's first commercial insulin. We give our best effort to our work and we put people first, including our employees. Our mission here at Lilly is we make medicine that help people live longer, healthier, and more active lives. And our values here at Lilly are integrity, excellence, and respect for people. Now I'll turn it over to Brittany Manny, PharmD, and you will hear her journey here at Lilly, starting in sales, which led her to her role HCP marketing.
Thank you, Santi, really appreciate it. And so what I'll talk about over the next few minutes is firstly where I've been and kind of what kind of led me to sales, where I am now, currently HCP marketing, and then lastly where I'm going. And so just to set a bit of context, I'm from Gary, Indiana, but I went to high school about 25 minutes from the Lilly headquarters in Indianapolis. And with that being said, I always knew that healthcare professionals worked at Lilly. Did I know anyone personally? No. But that did really help set the precedent for the rest of my career as I pursued a career as a healthcare professional. Secondly, I went to IU, graduated in 2010 for some fun and free learning, and then at Howard University, graduated in 2016. And at Howard, I was involved in a little bit of research. I was a part of the Drug Information Association, had leadership positions in the International Pharmaceutical Students Federation, as well as Kappa Psi. And all of those experiences led me to be competitive for my fellowship at Lilly. Next slide, please. Thank you. So with my fellowship, if there's more questions about this, I can answer in the Q&A, but this fellowship is no longer offered now. But I wanted to talk about it at a high level because this fellowship was a hybrid between marketing and medical, meaning that we kind of sat in the medical division of the company, but the role that I had was heavily influenced in marketing. And because it was heavily influenced in marketing, I learned the value of selling skills and business acumen and things of that nature. And so when I interviewed for this role, I was really gung-ho about being a medical science liaison, and no one can tell me anything differently. What I learned through mentorships, one-on-ones, and conversations with individuals at Lilly was that sales is a great way to either become a medical liaison or go into marketing. And so for me, which was unconventional at the time, I was very adamant and very intentional about getting a sales position after my fellowship. And so for those of you who are interested in sales and fellowships may not work out, that's totally fine, because sales basically has set the foundation for the rest of my career. So next slide, or next image. So the next role that I had after my fellowship was in dermatology. Oh, can you advance, Santi? Well, I don't know. There you go. Yeah, that's great. You can start right there. All right, so in the field or in sales, what I didn't know at the time was all of the small and what I thought to be insignificant things that occurred that were going to be completely valuable in the long term. And so what you see in this image here is a woman in a sample closet. Hopefully there's no copyright issues here. And, and what I learned from this experience in retrospect was that the way that we develop materials and the way that we position our materials in a closet kind of sets us apart from the competition. And so it was a constant battle kind of going and making sure that your product is first and foremost. And to say the least, the first 6 months that I was in sales, I knew I wanted to go into marketing. And I kind of let go of that long-term desire of me to be a medical science liaison, which was hard to do, but I was super motivated based on the experience that I had. So you'll see hovered at the top is Rofi Free Clinic. And for those of you that don't know, you can still practice as a pharmacist while you're working in the pharmaceutical industry with the appropriate approvals, of course. And so I don't get paid, I wish I did, but I volunteer my time once a month to help those who are underserved in our communities and also underinsured. So that's kind of, where I've been with sales, and feel free to ask me additional questions about that. So I'll shift into kind of where I am now. Where I am now is in HCP marketing. And my main role is to focus specifically on the sales force, creating and developing materials for them to communicate our brand strategy with healthcare professionals and their office staff. And at a super high level, I'll just talk about marketing. And for US marketing, there's three main customer groups. There are healthcare providers, or HCPs. There are consumers or patients. And lastly, there are payers, which are insurance companies and PBMs. And so those three groups are kind of the different types of opportunities that you can have from a sales career, depending on what your interests are. I know as pharmacists working in the retail setting, we're often, experiencing patients who can't afford their medications, leave their copay cards at home, and those experiences are extremely valuable in understanding the patient experience, especially when you go into marketing, if that's what you want to do. So that's kind of where I am. And lastly, I'll talk about where I'm going or where I would like to go. Advance. Awesome. So over the next 3 to 5 years, these are a few of the things that I'm interested in. I would be super excited if at least 2 of these came to fruition, but I just wanted to give an idea based on your interest on where you could go. So I still have a desire to go back into the field in some capacity as a district sales manager or someone who's a manager over the sales representatives. I love US marketing and would love to be a director in that space. And for those of you who are smart and got your MBA, not that you need it, but I definitely feel the need to go back and get my MBA as well. And then the last 2 are more international, global marketing, as well as an international assignment, working in a marketing capacity outside of the US. So in summary, I've spoke at a high level about where I've been and how my journey led to sales, where I am in HCP marketing, and where I would like to go in the future. I look forward to you all's questions. Thank you.
Okay, now we will hear from JM in PharmD and his current role with Medical Science Liaison.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening rather. Thank you, Santi. So in this section, I'll briefly talk about my experiences prior to sales, my sales journey, and where that has led me as a medical science liaison for Eli Lilly and Company. So I graduated from the College of Pharmacy in 2007. And really, honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to do at that point. I was young and I kind of got attracted to the paycheck at that time. All you had to do was sign, you got a bonus the next day and the job was yours. So I signed up as a retail pharmacist and I did that for like a year and a half. Soon came to the realization that there was a lot more out there and I needed to gain some clinical experiences, which led me to positions at the being an emergency room department pharmacist. And then further, trying to understand about the EMR systems and healthcare systems as a health informatics pharmacist. During one of my rotations, I knew I wanted to come into industry, but I really didn't do a fellowship or a residency. So I kind of had to seek other ways and other paths pretty much to gain skill sets along the way to be competitive for any position in the industry. And so I guess I was always seeking a challenging career, but I didn't know what that actually was. And my manager my current manager actually puts it very eloquently, how that Lilly actually hires you for a career and gives you opportunities to shift careers within this profession versus just signing for a job. So next slide, please, Santi. So why Lilly and why did I choose a career in sales? As previously mentioned, Lilly was founded by a pharmacist, and initially they only hired pharmacists for many roles in the company. And throughout the company now, if you see in the corporate ladder, many of those are pharmacists. So they really do value us and our education on what we can bring. The culture here at the company is amazing. They're doing great things for diversity and inclusion, and they treat their customers, they treat their employees right, and ultimately wanting to do the best for the patients. They're a top pharmaceutical company and a multinational company. So that means that operate globally. So if something of a global position interests you, maybe 10 to 15 years down the road, there could be opportunities. And so I had to really find out which way was I going to get into the medical science path I so desired in pharmacy school. So I looked at the job descriptions online and I realized that sales have very similar skill sets needed to be an effective medical science liaison. And so utilizing pharmacy knowledge and learning new skill sets in sales, having interactions with customers face-to-face, and really understanding their needs and providing the best value is the reason why I chose a career in sales. It's great because you can have a geo-flexible role. You're not tied to one state by taking the law exam and being restricted in that state. Currently, I'm on the East Coast, but maybe down the road, I want to go West Coast. And there's travel opportunities as well during launch meetings and also attending conferences. And another reason for the industry is that the work-life balance is amazing, and which I am forever grateful for, and I don't have to work weekends and I'm not mandated to cover shifts. So next slide, please, Santi. So the best parts about sales I really liked was developing key relationships with customers, identifying their needs and how I could bring value to them. I also enjoyed managing my own territory. I didn't have my manager constantly looking over me. I didn't have to punch in and punch out. So there's really great flexibility in this role. And if you like looking and analyzing data and trends, there's opportunities to do that within leadership roles on your team. On my team, they were known as champ roles. So you could be a champ in the brand space and network with the marketing team internally or the medical team. So those opportunities are there for you as well. And I really like the fact that we functioned as a team. No one individual on the team ever felt that they were bigger than anybody else. We worked in collaboration, and honestly, learning from other people is the best way to learn. So those were some of the things I enjoyed about sales. Next slide, please, Santi. So as I compare those skill sets and how that has transferred into this role, of course, having the PharmD is very helpful. We're able to understand deep scientific knowledge, communicate complex concepts to customers, and also provide medical information as we see fit in these roles. Again, exhibiting territory ownership. I've learned that from sales, how to plan accordingly and manage my time much better. And so I spend less time stuck in traffic, commuting, and I'm able to provide value in that sense. Excelling at customer engagement, again, going back to really identifying the customer, building those trustworthy relationships and finding out how we can best fulfill their needs. And lastly, displaying a strategic vision and leadership. So you don't need a title to be a leader. This could be displayed through other means, such as collaborating internally and externally here at Lilly, and picking up a different skill set, or participating and leading conference calls on your team. So there's some of those skills I've transferred into this role and been very helpful. Next slide, please, Santi. So my advice to all of you students and anybody really that's wanting a career in the pharmaceutical industry, explore all careers. Don't settle on the easiest one. Don't be tempted by retail pharmacy. You have a long career. There's no need to get burnt out. And so really explore all of those options for you. If a residency and a fellowship is something that you don't really want to do, really consider a sales position. You can grow as an individual. You can learn from others and be part of an amazing team and an amazing company. Network and learn from others, whether it be through organizations such as IPHO or even professionally on LinkedIn. There's a wealth of knowledge out there. Always be curious, have a desire to learn, and really in this industry, you just have to be adaptable to change. Anything can happen at any given time. And my last thing is just, we're doing this every single day. So just life is too short. Always have fun in what you're doing and explore all career options. So happy to take any questions in the panel. Thanks, Santi.
Thank you, Jay. Now I have our very last presenter, Doug Lee, Registered Pharmacist, Executive Sales Representative.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming out tonight, and thank you for inviting me to be on the panel. I've been with Lilly for 22 years. I went to Northeastern University School of Pharmacy, class of 1988, in the last century. I was very active when I was at school. I was part of the Student American Pharmacists Association, the Alpha Omega Pharmacy Fraternity, And I did go out to see a number of drug companies when I was in pharmacy school to see what it was about, whether I wanted to go the research route or maybe the sales route. And I did visit Lilly, and Lilly did remember that when I interviewed many, many years later. When it came time to come out of school, like Jay had said, there were a number of paths in front of us, and I went for the paycheck. I went for the big dollar retail paycheck. A very close friend of mine decided to go the industry route, and I frankly thought he was making a mistake because he was making about half of what I was going to make, and I was making twice what my father was going to make that year as a police officer, and I had student loans to pay. So I went the retail route, and I worked for one chain for 11 years. And what I liked about working for the chain was that I felt like I was helping patient outcomes. I was working with a doctor's group, and I was working with patients. What I found frustrating was the hours. I think I pulled 16 12-hour days in a row once, all those kind of things. But the main thing that frustrated me about retail pharmacy was that they kept on moving me every 3 or 4 years, and I got moved 5 times. And I was really dedicated to my doctors and my patients. And I'm a network and collaborative kind of person, so I knew that it was time for a change. Santi, the next slide, please. So I ran into my old friend from pharmacy school, and he was working for Lilly at the time, and he said, have you made a decision? Do you want to jump? And I said, yes. And the benefits that attracted me to a career in industry, especially at Lilly, was there was a clinical aspect, there's an intellectual aspect, and also work-life balance. The clinical aspect is I'm working cheek by jowl with a lot of physicians to help them achieve their patient goals. I'm in Boston now in the Harvard Medical area with Harvard Medical School and all the hospitals in the Longwood area of Boston. I'm working with some of the greatest minds in diabetes, and I'm on the clinical level with them, and I find it exceedingly rewarding. And one of the best compliments I ever got from any of the teams was, Doug, you're not just a sales rep, you're a valued team member. And as a pharmacist, that meant a lot to me. There's a lot of intellectual stimulation. I'm reading a lot of journals. I go to grand rounds 2 or 3 times a week. And yet I still have a work-life balance. I have every weekend off. I had time to spend with my kids. The vacation time is great. And, you know, that all led to a lot of career satisfaction. I went from a job to an actual career. Next slide, please. So the motivation driving that career transition, as I spoke before, after 11 years of retail, I knew that that was not meeting my needs. And remembering going out to Lilly, knowing that Lilly was a pharmacist started company and a lot of pharmacists working there, I went with my friend's advice and garnered some interviews at Lilly and went through the interview process that was going on at the time and started the transition. It took about 3 or 4 months, but I was hired in as part of the new diabetes division expansion that they had back in 1999. Next slide, please. So there were different paths within sales. I could have gone the sales to management path. I could have gone the sales to being a med liaison back in those days, or I could do the sales path where I just keep advancing myself in that sales path to reach what they call senior executive sales. And that's the path I chose. The reason why I chose that was even though I could be a great med liaison, reading journals all day was not my forte. I'm a network people person. I wanted to be out and about, and I wanted to be in the clinic space. And management, I did a lot of managing both in the military, but also in working in retail pharmacy. And I knew I really wanted to be in that clinic space more. So that's why I went for the sales path from starting as a senior sales rep and going up to senior executive sales. Next slide, please. So there are challenges and necessary skills when you're in the sales path or any career really, but in the sales path, you really have to have a lot of self-discipline. You're a business owner. There are guidelines and guardrails that Lilly puts in front of you, as well as, you know, quotas and statistics they want you to achieve, but it's really up to you to get out there and do it. So it does take quite a bit of self-discipline to motivate yourself to go after the goal and get there. And you always have to remember, you're the business owner that works for the greater business of Lilly. They have bottom lines, you have bottom lines. So there is that aspect of it. And you really need to want to strive to attain and surpass not only your expectations, but those of your physicians, the patients, and of course, the corporations. So you're really working for multiple bosses, yourself, the physicians, the company, but ultimately for the patient, because what you do affects patient outcomes every day. Next slide, please. So in that thought process of making a difference, when you're in the sales path too, you do have an opportunity to work very closely at the clinical setting. So I've had opportunities to join organizations such as MPHA, the Massachusetts Pharmacists Association. I'm a board director for the industry chair on that board. I've worked with philanthropic institutions to help raise money and awareness for, the diabetes care in underserved populations like the Asian American population, the African American population, things like that. I work with other pharmacy professors to help educate students, help them work on their presentation skills, all sorts of things like that. And that's been exceedingly rewarding and yet another adjunct to the sales career. Next slide, please. And so with that, I'm open to questions and answers. And one thing I did want to add too is one of the organizations that I'm very proud to have worked with was the Syrian American Medical Association, and working closely with them and collaborating with them in Lilly, we were very successful to get some really needed humanitarian aid to people stuck in the war zones in Syria. And that all came about because of a physician I was calling on who came up with the idea of trying to work something out. And I found that was one of my career highs so far, was able to really help in that philanthropic way. So sales is a lot about the numbers, but it's also about making people's lives better. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany, Jay, and Doug. That was great. Now we'll leave the rest of the time for Q&A, and I will hand it back to Jim.
Thanks, Santi. Brittany, Doug, Jay, terrific. I always love the stories. It's always inspiring. And no journeys are the same. So it's always fun to hear all the things that people get involved in and all the great accomplishments that pharmacists have. And we got many questions, that's fantastic. We're never going to be able to get to them all. So let's try to get maybe one panelist to answer per question. And then, we'll try to move through it quickly and get to as many of these, as we can. First one, Brittany, you mentioned, working also in traditional pharmacy simultaneously with your role. Can you explain how that's possible?
Explain how it just is. I have time. I have time to dedicate to patients in that. It's like a free clinic. So just to provide a bit of context, there's a physician that works there that treats patients for free, and nurses that attend to them. And when the patients are finished when they're done with those patients, then they get medications from us that we prescribe based on a formulary we have, and the patients get those medications for free. And so Lilly allows, there's a lot of pharmacists, I know quite many pharmacists that work outside of Lilly in either retail capacity, or they work remotely as a pharmacist. Not for free, that's just like another job that they have. And so if you have time that allows you to do that, Lilly supports you. There are some compliance and conflict of interest things that you have to keep in mind, but if what you're doing is appropriate, then you're more than welcome to.
Okay, thanks. And over the years, I've known many, many, many pharmacists who, quote, moonlighted and maybe worked at the chain pharmacy on the weekends. You do have to pass that by the compliance department now as a healthcare professional and an employee of a pharmaceutical company to avoid any conflicts of interest. Jay, tons of questions for you about informatics, pharmacy, about emergency room, but maybe one thing, emergency ED pharmacy, maybe the most helpful one, if you could answer for tonight, is how long would you need to be, in sales before you could potentially transition to an MSL role?
It's a great question. I would say depending on the individual, you'd need at least 2 years to be comfortable with the sales position, exactly understand the therapeutic area, the day-to-day responsibilities. And then from that point on, just trying to gain that deeper understanding of the therapeutic area, since you're considered an expert in the field and the face of the pharmaceutical company, and you're collaborating with thought leaders, key opinion leaders that have great influence over many of the primary care physicians, policy decision makers. So I feel that, maybe at minimum 2 years, but as we all know, these roles are very competitive. It took me about 4 years to become an MSL from sales. So it does vary, but depends on the individual and the right time at the right place.
What do you think a minimum amount would be to be in sales before transitioning to another role? Be able to, some people might want to sort of check that box, but they, in general, to feel like you've had the experience and you've got the skill set you need to apply to other things that you might do. What's a typical time somebody might be in the field before they transition, let's say, to a headquarters role?
To a headquarters role, yeah. I really think probably about three to 4 years as you're all trying to understand the field role. And as Brittany mentioned, gathering insights are valuable. So if you're able to be a master of that, you're able to go back into corporate and really provide the internal medical team and corporate headquarters those valuable insights. And I think that comes after time. So I would probably say anywhere from 2 to 4 years.
Yeah, and if I can interject, it could be less. Like, I would say no less than 2 years if you perform extremely well as a sales representative and you're very vocal about your intent to be a medical science liaison. And so that's the advice that I was given as a sales rep when I was pursuing an MSL role. It's just that you have to do the work and you have to excel in your territory. Otherwise, you're not going anywhere. Sorry, can I say that? But yeah.
Thanks. So Doug, this is really for everybody, but I think Doug could answer it. Sales role, MSL role, very customer facing, relationship building. So how has COVID impacted all this and how have you responded?
Right, so COVID has been a particular challenge, and I've had many of my customers the ones in Boston for over 16 years. So that's certainly helped with having those trusted relationships. And being a pharmacist has really helped that because it gives me a bit more street cred as a rep. I'm not just spouting a text that I can't understand beyond. So I understand patient flow. I understand the doctor's goals and their frustrations and health finance and that kind of thing. So having that trusted role has helped me in this COVID situation because doctors are very meager with their time now with telemedicine. They're kind of overwhelmed by that at the moment. And so they're not giving up a lot of time. But they will give time to me because they know I won't waste their time, that they trust me, and that I will give them value and resources that they need as far as information for helping with the patient mission. So it's been a lot about building that brand as a healthcare professional for a healthcare professional.
Great, thank you. Santi, a couple questions. I think the answer is no. Are there internships in sales? But in general, for Lilly, do you offer internships that are available to student pharmacists, number one? And then number two, what are you looking for from a recruiting standpoint, in a candidate for a pharmaceutical sales role?
Yeah, those are great questions. Right now, we don't have internship roles. We're currently working on that with some of the pharmacy schools, Jim. So that's in the work right now. As far as for recruiting side, we've hired a couple of pharmacists, and we're just really looking for somebody that has that ability to be able to communicate, and also as well as the clinical side, but also have the ability to also sell product as well too. Because we get a lot of pharmacists that I've spoken to where they're more on the clinical side. So as they're going through the interview, a lot of hiring manager share with me that they're looking for somebody that they could do that as far as clinical knowledge, but as also the ability to be able to sell as well too.
Yeah, so those communication skills and relationships.
Yeah, communication skills. Yeah, and we hired a couple of pharmacists who were pharmacy managers, specialty pharmacists, clinical pharmacists who were early career professionals who wanted that career change. A lot of them were working in retail, and they were staff pharmacists, and they transitioned to pharmacy manager, and they're at that point, where do they go next in their career? So they wanted to kind of expand and make that career change. So we have several that joined our sales team. But those are the things I would say, as a lot of them, as they look into the pharmaceutical industry, is you got to have that balance between the clinical knowledge, but also be able to show the hiring manager that you can also sell as well too.
Great, thank you. Doug, this one's back to you. We have some pharmacists out there that have been in retail, community pharmacy for a while. You made that transition after a number of years. But it applies to anyone, whether it's 1 year or 10 years, and you're in a chain pharmacy. Like, how do you differentiate yourself? How do you make that leap? Because so many companies are looking for prior experience, but how do you get experience unless you have it?
Right. That's a great question. When I made the leap, it was a bit scary at first because I was going into an area that I hadn't been in. I knew I could network, and I like collaboration and strategy and sales. So that helped in the interview process. I think what got me the job at Lilly was not only that I had a pharmacy degree, but that I could think on my feet. I think if a person can show, because I had no prior experience. I had pharmacy school and then 11 years of retail. But it was the stuff that I had done on the personal side, leading organizations, working with philanthropy. It was that leadership and strategical thinking, being goal-oriented, and being able to show that I did all these things. That was the balance that Santi's talking about. Yeah, I had the clinical knowledge. I know how the drugs work, how healthcare works, how doctors' offices run, but you have to have that core piece. And I think recruiters can see that in a person and put them ahead for an interview process, because some people just have that knack or have that developed or can be developed in that area, but they have to show some sort of spark there in the first place.
That's a great answer. I'm trying to resist the urge to help answer any of these, but I got to say, I'm a recruiter too, in addition to IPHO, which is my wonderful hobby. Every hiring decision is based partly on experience and partly on potential. So you got to show potential, and that's what Doug was alluding to, I think. Hey, back to Brittany.
Jim,
Yes.
can I just share one thing?
Do.
For really quick, when we had this several pharmacists that we just hired, during the interview process, they were going up against candidates that had sales experience, that the hiring manager picked the pharmacist.
To be honest, in my career, I was never qualified for any position that I had, and I got hired. They saw potential in me, so I did something right. And everybody can. There's potential in all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So back to Brittany. There are a number of folks here interested in commercial functions and a career there. How easy is it to get promoted? I mean, I was fascinated by your slide showing the different branches that you can go into from where you are. It's one of the great things about being a pharmacist in the industry. You can go so many different directions, but you have several different stepping stones where you can go from now. How promotable are you? How many different things can you do in commercial, and how do you get there?
Yeah, I think my answer is kind of similar to the medical science liaison answer, is that the sky is the limit. And one of the reasons I wanted to do sales, because it would be like an objective representation of what I could do and my performance. And so my ticket to being promoted was actually excelling in my territory. And I could communicate with anyone that I wanted to do marketing. And I would say that the most natural segue for me and what my interests were to go into US HCP marketing, where I could leverage those skills that I learned in sales and, you know, my insights on how I felt about the different materials that we were using and how we were balancing safety and efficacy information to create things for healthcare professionals. So it depends on what your interests are, but your ticket out is really doing well in sales. And when I'll say this, when I did go into sales, I actually loved it, and I could see why you could like spend your entire career in sales. But I was just eager just to learn a bit more about the commercial side of the business. I hope that answers the question about how promotable it is. But it really just depends on what your interests are and the timing, as Jay mentioned earlier, the time and location as to where you want to work. Because some people like sales because they don't have to live in Indianapolis. And they have the flexibility to live like near family, whatever the case may be.
I think I'd like to add that in terms of the territory, the biggest difference is currently on my team, the 12 MSLs that cover the whole country. In sales, you have a smaller geography, so that means less overnight so you have to manage. So if your work-life balance means that you need to be at home for any reason, closer to home base, sales could be a great avenue and an option.
Excellent. Wow, we got 70 questions. I'm going to pick some good ones here, I hope. Let's see. Well, maybe back to Jay for this one. It's for anyone, but Jay can answer it, I think. It's on the mind, I think, of a lot of the students here. Hey, I may not want to go to the CVS or Walgreens at all. Any kind of, I want to go right into industry if possible out of school. So do you recommend trying that? Can I get hired that way? How would I get hired that way? Or is it more beneficial to get more experience in a traditional pharmacy setting first?
I think it depends on the individual, but you know, having that PharmD now, it doesn't really qualify you for many positions out there. They are looking for some kind of experience, whether it be through residency or a fellowship or doing something just a little bit different to gain that experience. So I think that jumping into any role in the industry directly from PharmD may be a little bit challenging, but if you're willing to put the work in, as Doug has mentioned previously, you know, pick up additional skill sets, whether it's through LinkedIn learnings or further education, that could be another way to quickly get in to the industry.
I will say that my friend in pharmacy school back in the 80s went directly in and was with Lilly for well over 25 years. And I do think there are people at Lilly now, Santi, correct me if I'm wrong, that have come in directly from college. There is a certain proportion that do come in.
Yeah, we do have some that come directly from, you're right, Doug, that come directly from college. Yeah.
Right. So you can do it without prior experience, but you have to have those, that desire, especially in sales, that desire to achieve. Yeah. And be able to think on your feet and networking and that kind of stuff.
And I completely agree. I'll just add one thing. If you are thinking about sales immediately following a pharmacy school, I tell people this, feel free to not take my advice, but when you go into your rotation year, try to do as much clinical as you can, because that will help, because some people may know what therapeutic area they may be competitive for to sell in, and others don't. So as much clinical experience as you can get in pharmacy school, knowing that you're not gonna wanna be a clinical pharmacist or retail pharmacist, it can be really valuable.
Thanks. So, all right, Doug, we're going back to you on this one. I think this is an outstanding question. You talked about leadership, which I think there's no substitute really for getting involved in various student organizations, whether it's IPHO or any of them. But besides good grades, which, hey, everybody's smart when you have to be really intelligent to graduate from pharmacy school. So to me, that's a given. the question is, other than good grades and these leadership skills that you might get through a student organization, what other skills should they be developing to prepare themselves for a career in industry?
So you have to, well, you have to be a little thick-skinned, of course. Sales is a little bit difficult at times, but I think it's really self-discipline and being able to think on your feet, because you are throwing a lot of curveballs, and being able to find any crack on a wall, I guess is the best way to put it. But my biggest strength that I found that I relied on mostly was being able to communicate with people, connect with people, and be able to network. Whether it be the guy in the mailroom up to the CEO's office in an institution. Each person has a part to play. Each person is a cog in that machine, so to speak, that can get you the introduction you need, or the information you need, or into that team. So yes, you need the clinical background, you need the smarts and all that. You need to also know how to adapt and how to network, and how to, because Dr. A has this kind of personality, Dr. B has that kind of personality, and you have to be able to speak to both of them, sometimes next to each other. So you need to know how to be able to communicate. You have to be a good communicator and a good networker, I would say. Those are the skills that you really want to work on and develop. Not be shy.
Another similar question that I'll throw out there to anyone who's going to raise their hand on the panel. Medical writing. How important is it to be, a good writer in your role?
I can attempt to take that. Since most of the communication that we do is presenting, we're really not involved with too much medical writing. However, there could be cases where we need to review presentations to have legal authorize it, or even with the medical internal team, if it's a manuscript that needs an MSL support. Sometimes we may need to do that as well, but it's not the majority of the time.
Okay, I think this is for Brittany. So you're the one, I think you mentioned in your presentation about MBA, and you said, maybe, but not that it's required. Part A is why consider your MBA or not, and then if a pharmacist is going to get any dual degree for a role in industry, what do you think would be the most useful?
I think the MBA would be the most useful to answer the question. And when I was in pharmacy school, the dual degree was offered, but I didn't want to do it because I wanted to graduate as soon as possible. So for those of you who are sticking it out and doing that, that's awesome. The reason that I'm thinking about it now and actively pursuing it is just because I feel like I lack business acumen as it pertains to finance, accounting, and things like that. And I like school. So I could learn those things on the job over time. That's why I was saying an MBA is not required. But I kind of just want to, go to school and learn it in one fell swoop and, and then apply it to my role immediately.
I think I'd like to add that I'm actually currently doing a part-time MBA program, and Lilly is very helpful in providing assistance for a portion of it. And I think it's amazing, the MBA, you're able to learn some business skills, and you're able to apply them in your day-to-day job. You gain a networking alumni group that you can ping pong ideas off of, whether it be in your professional role or even in your private role. I feel that it gives you that additional skill sets where you're able to assess risk versus benefit. You're able to think a little bit more strategically, understand organizations from a higher level. There's just many things that I find that an MBA is very useful for.
And I'll jump in here really quickly and say, besides the other degrees, credentialing is rather important too. The reps that have more credentials, and the doctors see, especially in sales, sees a rep is more in tune, more in line with the medical professionals that they work with on a day-to-day. So if you're in diabetes, you're a CDE or a registered dietitian or an RPH, that certainly helps. And there are a number of pharmacists who have their CDE or something like that. So some credentialing does help as well.
Hey, Jay, what opportunity or what went through your mind? What was your decision-making process when you decided to leave sales for another role in Lilly?
I really wanted to utilize my PharmD experience and really understand the science and be part of the medical affairs team. And after doing sales for four years, I had a great time doing it, but I just needed to move to the next step to gain that deeper knowledge from the medical affairs side. And so that's one of the reasons I did it, and also to be, established as a credible and be the medical expert, the face of Lilly in my current territory.
Great. Hey, Doug, so we've got a number of questions that are kind of like this one. So we kind of touched on it, but maybe not so much. What's a typical day or a month? Like what are the top 3 things that you find yourself doing as a sales rep?
Right. So obviously the number one thing is getting out there and making calls. And the more you are in the presence of the healthcare providers, the people who put pen to paper or EMR now, that's the number one thing. And technically the job is Monday through Friday, but I liken it more to being in college. Yeah, you have flexibility with hours as far as seeing the doctors and when you can see them and everything, but you always have a project coming up. You always have a call coming up. You do work some weekend days, at least in my division, because of trade shows and stuff like that. But the typical day is you get out early, you see as many docs as you can, you go to in my territory, because I have a city academic territory, I have Harvard Medical School, you're off to grand rounds, you try to make fellows rounds and stuff like that. So I find it very exciting and very intellectually stimulating. And some of the rounds are at the far fringes of the disease state that I work in. So I get some genetics in there and stuff like that. But my typical day is, start out with pre-call planning in the morning and then head out and catch my docs and then try to get a lunch with a doc and then more in the afternoon. And then when you get home, there's the other Lilly projects you work on. So like I said, there is some flexibility in your timing, but you tend to work more than just a 40-hour week. I'll give you that. But you're not locked into 4 weekends in a row and 6 12-hour days in a row kind of thing. If that's a good answer.
Okay, thanks. Here's one. I think I'm going to have to answer this. Could I speak more about the mid-year process for December 2020 fellowship applicants now that's completely virtual? No surprise, all the major medical meetings have gone virtual, including our own. So I'm going to say at our IPHO annual meeting in September, we will cover the process for every major program and every program that we're aware of. We're in the process of reaching out to all of them to find out what they're doing. It'll have very little to do with ASHP. You might put your resume in on PPS or something like that. But there won't be a lot of interaction, I don't think, in the quote mid-year sense. Doug, back to you again on a similar note from what we just answered. What percentage of your time is actually interacting with a HCP and talking about the product? And also, and this is important, it's really true for all the jobs in industry, but what do they mean when they say build and maintain the relationship?
Right. So I would say a significant portion, because the way my territory is set up, I don't have a lot of travel in between sites. I can walk from hospital building to hospital building. They're all within a square mile. So, and when I walk into a clinic, I can see a number of doctors at once. So I do spend a significant amount of time in the presence of all my major healthcare professionals in the course of a day. Of course, COVID has changed that quite a bit, but when it was when it was regular times, I would spend a lot. Now, in someone who's got a more rural territory or spread out territory, they're going to have some windshield time, right, as they bounce from place to place. You maximize that time by, knowing your doctor's schedules, where they're going to be, when they're going to be, where they like to talk to you. Some docs don't want to talk to you in a clinic. They'd rather talk to you at the sandwich shop or out by the mailbox or by the car. It depends, right? So you learn all these tricks of the trade. But I would say probably as a percentage, of the day, when I figure in travel and all the other stuff, probably about 60% of the time, 65% of the hours are actually spent in front of a healthcare professional. And what was the other part of the question? I'm sorry, I've forgotten.
That's good for now, I think.
Okay.
I forgot it myself because I've been for Brittany here, I think. So there's a lot of questions around this, and wow, all of our lives have been turned upside down by COVID, and everything that used to be isn't anymore. And hey, life's about plan B, professionally and personally. So there's system-wide hiring freezes due to COVID now. And also, you know, if you don't know already, for our panelists, I think you probably do, a lot of these rotations, these APPEs that the students are on are virtual instead of in person. Some of them are in person. But how does one build a meaningful experience during this time? You know, if internships are super scarce, or I'm doing my, you know, a lot of them were canceled, you know, this summer. You know, what can they be doing to build meaningful experiences that'll prepare them on their resume, or for, hey, when you get the question one day in front of an employer, they're all going to ask, what did you do during the COVID era? You know, and how did you continue to build yourself professionally? So I'm going to open that question up to all three of the panelists.
I guess the first thing that comes to mind to me is, as a pharmacist or a healthcare professional in training, are you able to volunteer? Because during these times, there's a lot of people who are either out of work, you know, the lines are extended at food banks and things like that. Are you lending your expertise and your knowledge to those who are in need? And I think, you know, years from now, if you're able to speak to that and able to, you know, articulate how you've made an impact, I think that can be extremely valuable. I mean, that's just the first thing that came to my mind.
Thanks. Jay?
Yeah, I would agree with, you know, volunteering, gaining those experiences. And even today in this role, we focus part of our time on professional development. We're on weekly team meetings. We're going on LinkedIn learnings to develop ourselves and the team that surrounds us, just to make ourselves better. So when that day comes, when we're able to have a face-to-face interaction in the field, we're able to, you know, gain some other insights and still keep on practicing, even though we're currently not face-to-face, but you know, utilizing other skill sets, whether it be utilizing technology, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, to connect virtually. So I think that as long as you're staying up to date with the science, you know what's going on around you, you know, you're doing something for yourself so you feel good, whether it's working out or something that, you know, you stay focused on and you're maintaining a good positive outlook on things. I think those are a few of the things that I would at least advise.
Thanks, Jay. Doug, what about you?
I would echo both what Brittany and Jay said, and keep a focus on too that this is an international crisis, and there are people all around the world who need support. There's a lot of underserved population. So whether you're doing something directly in healthcare or something maybe in support in other ways, because this, of course, affects people on many different levels, financially, mentally, medically. So any place where you can, as a healthcare professional, jump in to help make people's lives better while this is going on, and you can look back at it years later and say, I helped out in 2020 to help better people's lives, I think is kind of the mantra you'd want to have.
Perfect, thanks. Well, we were able to get to 23 out of 106 questions. So Santi, I think we're gonna need another one of these. I
know, a lot of questions, but yeah, yeah, wow.
So, just a couple things as we close here. I wanna again thank you know, Brittany and Doug and Jay, terrific. I learned a lot from each of you tonight, and I really appreciate that. I know on behalf of our audience, thanks very much. Really inspiring. Great to partner with Lilly. IPHO is really pleased with that. Lilly's going to be exhibiting also at our annual meeting I referenced earlier. It's coming up September 11, 12, 13. If you want to get these questions and more answered and have a lot of direct interaction with not just Lilly, but other companies, We're going to be providing that and a lot of advice and guidance from industry pharmacists and fellows. Sales is a great way into industry. I say it almost every time I give a presentation. I didn't do it myself, but I've seen so many people successfully enter industry and have terrific and rewarding careers through that pathway. So I encourage you to strongly consider it. I want to thank my colleagues, Deborah Luchansky-Wiener and Melissa Rodenbach, for working with Santi and me to put this together and make tonight possible. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Santi for any closing remarks, and then we'll wish everybody a good night.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here this evening. Take that time to listen to our panelists share their journey here at Lilly, starting in sales, which led them to other opportunities. We hope that now you have a better understanding of the unique opportunities for pharmacists in the industry. We encourage you to please connect with us in LinkedIn and feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions later. It's been a pleasure being here with everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, and for sure this will be posted on our website within a couple days.
Okay.
So
All right, perfect.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Santi.
Bye.
Good night.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.